Good morning. We are in Daniel chapter 6. One of my favorite stories to tell children is Daniel in the lion's den. At the end of chapter 5, we find out that Darius is now there. Darius the Mede he took Babylon. It's now controlled by the Medes and the Persians. And Cyrus was he was the general, I believe. He was the general. Yeah, there is a nephew, yes. They were related in some way, for sure. They were related. But I believe that Cyrus was the general that took it, but Darius is the one that's over Babylon, or what used to be Babylon. He's the one that is there, and he's the guy that is 62 years old. That's at the very end of that chapter. So Darius, we begin chapter 6 talking about Darius, and I couldn't decide whether just to read this entire chapter to you or to divide it up into sections, and I think I'm going to leave it the way I had originally written it. And so we're going to read a couple of verses beginning in chapter 6. Verse 1, It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So let's just stop right there. So Darius comes in, he decides to make a few changes in the way the government is operating, and he says, I'm going to divide it up into little sections. I've got 120 sections, and I like to say that he put like a mayor over each section, or maybe a sheriff over each section, rather than this satrap person. But all my commentators said those are governors. So whatever. Okay, so governor. All right. You got governors or you have sheriffs over these 120 areas, and then you need something for all of these guys. You need someone for all these guys to report to, so he's going to divide that up into 3. And guess who's right up there? Daniel is. Well, how in the world does Darius even know about Daniel? It makes you wonder. You're like, okay, Daniel is quite a man that he has made an impact already. Or maybe there's a whole bunch of people talking about him, but he's made an impact on this king. I'm going to put Daniel, who's an exile, over, he's one of 3 over all of these guys. So that is interesting. It didn't take Darius very long to see the character of Daniel. And this elevated rank, it is nice. It's a wonderful thing. This is wonderful. But guess what? That makes you a target, especially if you're a little different from everybody else, So he is almost immediately a target. If you look at verse 2, the end of verse 2, it says the satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. What do you think it means by not suffer loss? Money. This is about collecting money. That's why I like the term sheriff. Okay? I think of the sheriff of Nottingham. He's supposed to be sure everybody's paying their taxes and that is what Daniel's job is. That's what their job is to be sure everybody is paying the taxes that they're supposed to pay to the Medes. That was their job. And so that's what it meant by that. They were to report any loss of tax revenue to this king. The refusal of any subjects to pay their taxes would be reported by these guys. So, when you look over what we have studied so far about Daniel, you find out what kind of man Daniel is. In chapter 1, you find out that Daniel is a man of integrity. He was not going to defile himself with the food. He was I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and he found a way to influence the people that were right above him so that he could do this. So he is a man of conviction. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of respect. What do you find out in chapter 2 about Daniel? Nebuchadnezzar, what does he do when he finds out that what King Nebuchadnezzar was going to do? He asked for more time, and then what was the very first thing that he did? He went. He got who? Look in verse 13 of chapter 2. Oh, no, that's not it. Don't look there. Don't look there. Don't look there. I'm looking for it.
You already put the astronomer.
What now?
The astronomer?
No.
Yeah.
Skip that one.
What?
Skip that one.
He
He went to his friends, and what did he?
said to pray.
And he said to pray. You find out in that chapter he's a man of prayer. Also, that's what I wanted. I don't know what verse that is, but that's it. He's a man of prayer. He's a man of respect. He's a man of conviction. You also find out in this same chapter, does he take any credit for that at all? No. In fact, he tells the king in verse 27, no wise man, no enchanter, no musician or diviner, nobody can tell you this but one person, one thing, God. He doesn't take any credit, so you find out that he's a man of humility, which Nebuchadnezzar struggled with, which Belshazzar struggled with. He's a man of humility. All of these things. You find out he's a man of friendship. He has those guys promoted at the end of all that. Brings them up. You find he's a man of morality here. Because something's going to happen. These guys are out to get Daniel. He has been elevated to a position, and they are just plain jealous of it. They're just, and hey, there's a big old target on Daniel's back, and you're going to find out what kind of man Daniel is. Look in verse 4. Let's read chapter 6, verse 4. At this, the administrators and the satraps, that's all of them, by the way. There was 120 satraps, and there were 2 other administrators. All of them tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Verse 5, finally these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God. Verse 6, so the administrators and the satraps went as a group to the king, and they said, O King Darius, live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, O king, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the laws of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. Okay, so jealousy just eats at you. It's funny. First, they're going to try to find something wrong with the way he does his job, discredit him, and just so that the king would lose all of his faith and trust in Daniel. And I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. I'm going to shove you aside, and that's the end of you. Not really physically hurting Daniel. You think Daniel even cares about the position he has? Knowing the kind of man that Daniel is, I don't think he even cares. But this keeps eating at them, and then they realize, we can't find anything wrong with this guy. You know? The way he conducts his business, we can't find any corruption of any kind at all. If they can find a flaw in his political life, then they can discredit him. But they couldn't find any basis for charges. He is trustworthy, he is hardworking, and he isn't corrupt. But they know something about Daniel. He is faithful to his God. So there is an issue. King Darius doesn't care anything about Jewish laws. Who cares if Daniel breaks Jewish law? But if Daniel were to break a law of the Medes and Persians, then we've got something. So we've got to come up with a law that can be broken, all right? So they come up with a plot that can use his religious convictions against him, and they go to the king, all of them it looks like. You'd think the king would have, maybe not all of them went. I'm going to try to give the king some credit here, okay? Maybe not every single one of them came, because I'd be looking around going, well, where's Daniel? He's my number one guy. I really like him. Why isn't he here with all this? No. So they're there. They're requesting a new law. And you think, this law is not to benefit the people in any way. It is to bring harm against a very loyal subject, one loyal subject that abides by the law. As a leader of the people, their business was to frame laws for the good of all their citizens. No law should ever be framed with a view to exploit the least of its citizens. And if there is one law that is devised to exploit one citizen, those who are behind it strike a blow to everyone. Boy, this is something we need to learn. Too. So what was the plan? What was the law? So they go to the king, and they say, hey, if anybody prays to a god or a man in the next 30 days, they're to be thrown into the lion's den. Who does anyone include? Make no doubt they're aiming at one guy. Daniel, high official or not. And this was to be put in writing. And, Darius is just playing right into this. Oh, wow, that's a good idea. That's great. Flattery does all kinds of things. He sees fit to sign this into law when, in fact, he's been conned. He is trapped by his own power, actually ensnared by his own conceit. He's like, yeah, I'd like everything for 30 days, everybody just to pray to me, and that's it. That's wonderful. I love it. Let's do it kind of thing. What king wouldn't want men coming to him in prayer and request? These men are crafty. Do you even think they need 30 days? Because they know Daniel. They could have said, let's just do it for one day. They didn't even need 30 days. What they knew was that Daniel was a man of prayer, and now all they needed to do was sit back and watch it happen, because it's going to happen. The Babylonians were known to burn people, hence the fiery furnace. No, that's not what the Persians did. They had lions. They fed people to lions, okay? It was customary for violators of the Persian law to be fed to the lions. Once this law is made, it cannot be changed. Once the king pressed his signet ring into the wax, it became a national law. And there would be no way to pardon Daniel once he broke this law. So in total ignorance of how this would play out for Daniel, the king wrote it and signed it into law. He just didn't know. Okay, so let's look at verse 10. Reading in verse 10. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to your God, any god or man except to you, O king, would be thrown into the lion's den? And the king answered, the decree stands in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree that you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to the king and said to him, Remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. Okay. So when Daniel finally becomes aware of the law, he sit around worrying about it for a couple of days.
Just threw open the windows and prayed.
He just threw open the windows and got on his knees and started praying. I love the fact that the very first thing he does is he gives thanks. Yeah, he gives thanks first. Thanks him for all those things. His immediate response of this news is to pray. Why do you think he opened the window toward Jerusalem?
He knew they were watching.
So they could hear him.
Oh, well, maybe they were watching. Any other suggestions? I think he always opened the window toward Jerusalem. Jerusalem is his home. That's where the temple is. That's where God was in the temple, you know, so he opened it toward Jerusalem. This was just a customary thing.
My Bible says as he had been doing previously.
Oh yeah, he'd always done that. That's how they knew.
Yeah.
They knew, yeah. And he prayed for three times a day. I looked and I looked and I looked through the Mosaic Law for where it said pray 3 times a day. It's not there. It's not there. But I know this was a customary thing to do. Look at Psalms 55. Psalms 55. David, this is the Song of David. Psalms 55, verse 17. Laura, you want to read it?
55:17.
Yep.
Evening, morning, and noon, I cry out in distress, and he hears my voice.
Yep. That's David talking.
That must be a rule that's in the Miknah.
Okay.
You know.
You know, I didn't think to Google.
They told you, there was the 10 Commandments, but the Miknah told you how to do the 10 Commandments.
Okay. So it could very well be. It could very well be.
Yeah.
Because there are also
Man-made.
some examples in Acts, okay? Look in Acts 3, verse 1. You can think, why 3 times a day? They were religious about it. Acts 3, verse 1. This is Peter and John. Rita, you want to read it?
Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the 9th hour, the hour of prayer.
Okay, so there you go. The 9th hour is about 3 in the afternoon. That's it was customary. And stay right there in Acts. Look at chapter 10, verse 9. Linda Burnett, got that?
Yes. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray.
Okay, so noon. Peter's going up there about that time of the day. So we know from different texts that they prayed at certain times of the day, 3 times a day, in fact. The 3rd hour, the 6th hour, the 9th hour, which is 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. So the whole point of this is this was just customary for a Jew to do. That's what they did. That's what they did. At least faithful Daniel did that 3 times a day. So he's just going to continue to do exactly what he always does. You know, he doesn't do this to defy the king of the new law. He doesn't do this as mere show, okay? He does it because it's his settled practice, and he will not allow man's law to control his commitment to God. That's why he did it.
And he didn't hide it.
And he didn't hide it. He's not going to, okay, well, now I'm going to be secretive about it. He's going to do just like he always did. Okay, so what's his posture?
Kneeling.
On his knees, kneeling on his knees, okay? So Daniel was a man of prayer. They knew exactly where and when to watch because he did it all the time. The bad guys had been frustrated with the fact that Daniel was honest, and they knew the only way to get him in trouble is if he had to decide between God and Darius. Pretty good job. Okay, so they don't waste any time. They're going to go tell just as quickly as they can. They've got this plan all in place. This is working out just like we planned. I mean, perfectly, okay? So look at how they phrased the question. You know, wasn't it you, O king, that signed the decree? Was it you, king, that signed this decree? Somebody signed the decree, king. You know, it's hilarious how they did it. You did this, king, you know. Notice they don't mention Daniel's name right away.
I think the king realized he's been tricked.
Oh man, I'm telling you, he has been conned, and you just wait. That evening he's going to have some trouble sleeping over this. So anyway, they don't mention Daniel's name right away. They get the king to agree that the decree was indeed signed by the king himself first. And I honestly think they probably knew this king had a lot of respect for Daniel. So once their trap is set, then they reveal who has violated the decree. They tell the king that it is Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah. They didn't say, This is Daniel the governor. This is Daniel the, the guy that you put over the head, his beautiful title or administrator. No. This is the guy who isn't one of us. He's an exile from Judah. Oh, I mean, let's just get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Isn't that the real reason? He is not one of us. Yeah, that's it. So what's the king's reaction? Did we read that a while ago? Yeah. He's distressed over this. He's distressed. He realizes he has been played. It says that he did everything he could until sundown. I don't know what you could do to not have to throw Daniel into the lion's den, but whatever there was, he was trying his best to do that. If you are a king and you realize that these men have used you in this way, that you have been a pawn in this, and they clearly have no respect for their king, can you imagine what he's feeling and thinking right now? He's like, I'm the one that signed it in, and I am totally helpless to help this guy now. It's a law, that's a bad thing. Okay, so let's read verse 16. We're going to go through 24. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and he hurried to the lion's den. And when he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" And Daniel answered, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So, the bad guys don't go away. They're hovering around to be sure that the king does what the king is supposed to do. And they're there at sundown, and they just remind him gently, "Remember, this can't be changed, king." Yeah. Not very nice guys. Remember, O king, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. I'm really not liking these guys. You're just beginning to get on my nerves a little bit, I'm like, oh boy. So the king has no choice but to have Daniel thrown into the den. And once he's down into the den, and it's funny, the lions didn't immediately eat him because he's talking to him while he's down in there. And he, says, "May the God that you continually serve save you. I hope he rescues you." Brave words. Does he actually believe that Daniel's God will rescue Daniel? I would think not. I don't think there's any trust there. Because of his next actions, it specifically says he has no entertainment that night. He's not eating, drinking, he's not sleeping, he's concerned. He's like, "Oh man, what have I done? He's dead in the bottom of the lion's den, and I'm the one that did it to him, So, I don't think there's any trust there. We're not like that at all. We don't let things keep us awake at night. Brenda texts me, "I didn't sleep very good last night." I'm like, "Why? Why didn't you sleep very good last night? Of all the people in the world that should be sleeping well at night, it's us." Because why? Because we have trust like Daniel. We just don't let those little things bother us. Yeah, not us. Oh well. Anyway, that's a whole other lesson. So, yeah.
Easy to say.
So easy for me to say it.
Hard to do.
So at least the king realized his own inability to help Daniel. I cannot help you. And he hoped for the God, Jehovah God's ability to help Daniel. You know, it was hope against hope for this king. And what does he do? He has a stone brought in, and he seals the stone, you know, just to be sure nobody can do it. You know, Jehovah has never been bothered much by decrees or stones, for that matter. If there's a stone in the way, it doesn't matter. There's a song, a popular song about he's still rolling stones. He is. He's still rolling. He's not bothered by that at all. So while the king worried, God is working. Jehovah God is working. He sends an angel. I love that. When we get to chapter 10, it's about angels too, working on our behalf, working behind the scenes. I just love this.
Yeah. In Psalm 34:7, the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them.
Okay.
The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his cry is attentive to and his ears are attentive to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, and he cuts off the memory of them from the earth.
Yeah, isn't that good?
So David truly believed all that,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. These angels.
and we should.
So the king has made it that the situation is not going to change, but God is going to change the situation anyway.
But you know,
Go ahead.
him sealing it, to me, it's like, when they put guards around Jesus' tomb.
Oh, yeah, they
It
sealed
took
it.
away all doubt that it was God's power that did it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be God that does it. So it's interesting that he doesn't sleep. He goes back to his nice cushy palace while Daniel's in the den with lions, and something's gnawing at the king. If I were the king, yes, I would. I don't think that he thinks Daniel's going to survive this. He's probably not thinking about that. But who is he thinking about? How I was used, how I was manipulated, okay, I'm the king, and I have been manipulated. I have been disrespected, okay? So when we've done something that we should be ashamed of, there's absolutely nowhere we can go to escape our conscience. You can't hide from your guilt. While the righteous lay amid hungry lions, the ungodly are sitting rejoicing. In this case, the king cannot sleep. I think Daniel probably slept okay that night. He probably did. You know, the plan seemed absolutely perfect to the bad guys. My mother used to say, oh, the best made plans of mice and men. That's a quote from Robert Burns. She loved to quote literature. She always quoted literature to me all the time. But the bad guys think they got away with the absolute perfect plan. So far, everything has gone their way. Absolutely. We're going to get rid of our adversary. But sometimes things don't actually work out the way you planned. There's some scriptures to support that. Look at Ecclesiastes 10:8. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes 10:8. Oh, Solomon in his wisdom. Oh, I love this. Amy, you have it?
Yeah, Penny.
Uh-huh.
He who digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a serpent.
You dig a pit, you might fall into it. Look at Psalms 57:6. Another one of David's. Psalms 57:6. I'll read this one. They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. So the plan is not going as it was planned. And when you think about the kings so far in the book of Daniel, we've got one that became like a beast and ate grass. You've got another one that couldn't control his shaking, fainting and everything. Now we have a king who is going to hurry perhaps even run to the lion's den. And he gets there and he calls out to Daniel in an anguished voice. Verse 16, no. Did we read this? We haven't read this part, have we? Okay, let's read verse 19. Let's start reading in verse 19. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den, and when he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? And Daniel answered, O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den, and when Daniel was lifted from the den, he found no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. I think I did read that. Yeah, I think I read that. Okay, so in his anguished voice, some viewers may use the word lamentable. What does it mean to lament? Cry out. And you can hear it in the king's voice. He's crying out. He's grieved. In the light of what we know about our God, it's really foolish for kings and presidents, or anyone else for that matter, to take themselves very seriously, because he is ultimately in charge of things. What does the king want to know as he peers down into the den? Daniel, have you been rescued or not? The king wanted Daniel to survive, but probably had no faith at all that it would actually occur. But Daniel answers back, my God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of lions, and angels are powerful. There was one time that an angel killed 185,000 men in one night. That's found in 2 Kings 19. And I don't know about you, but that's the angel I want on my side. It only took one this night to shut the mouths of lions. Last year when we studied Hebrews does not mention Daniel's name in the faith chapter. But it does say that lions' mouths were shut. That sounds. So it backs up this event, the occurrence of this event. So, how does an angel stop the mouths of lions? I don't know. But there is a secret to this. Why is it that Daniel has been saved? He trusted. Because he had trusted in his God, verse 23. Yes. There's plenty of faith on Daniel's part. Plenty of faith. God's got us covered. We can close our eyes and sleep because we know that he's in control of the situation. Daniel says in verse 22 that he has never done anything to wrong the king. I don't think Daniel is saying that he is sinless. None of us can say that. But he has been continually devoted to God. Technically, Daniel was guilty of breaking the law. But he had done so only to honor a higher one. Okay, there's a line where we can't do this because we are honoring this God. And Daniel was like, the line has been set, and I know where I'm supposed to be on it. And he wasn't going to give on that. He does say, by praying to his God 3 times a day, I did not insult you, king, in any way. If anything, I have been respectful of you. I've continued with my obligations for this country. I mean, all these things, Daniel, I have honored you in this. I didn't hurt you. And the king's attitude is, he's happy, he's relieved. He's like, okay, let's get him up out of here, He orders Daniel to be lifted out of the den. A miracle has occurred because there is not one lion's claw or scratch mark upon Daniel. Daniel's God has delivered him, and it is a miracle that occurred. Now the king has had all night to think about this. So let's see what he does. Verse 24. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and their children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, the nations, and men of every language throughout the land, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is a living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." That's a beautiful thing.
Where did that pride go?
Beautiful thing. What'd you say?
Where did that pride go?
Yeah.
You know, he was a proud
He was
king, and now
No.
he's humble.
He's humbled. Okay, yeah, yeah. He's had all night to think about this, how it came about, how he had been played by certain men, and in his anger against these bad guys, he says, "I know exactly what to do with you. You're going in the lion's den." But not just themselves, their wives and their children. These lions have been waiting all night, and now the opportunity is available. And Scripture says, before they even reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them. So, this decree now, he writes to his whole kingdom, which is a whole known kingdom of the world at that time, and it's very common with the words of Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 4. Very common. It's not a statement of faith in God as the only God. It's still not. It's just to recognize him as one of the most great and powerful ones. He doesn't even say that you are to worship this God only. He doesn't denounce all of his other gods, but rather that men should fear and respect the God of Daniel, which is a good thing. Of course they should fear and respect this God. This is a God who's protected his people. This is a God that caused a king to behave like a wild beast. This is a God that rescued people from fiery furnace. Now this is the God that has saved Daniel in the night of the lion's den. He does deserve our fear and our respect. This is a story about weakness. In my prayer this morning, I talked about weakness. We are weak without God. We have nothing without him. God told us that his power is made perfect in our weakness. The king couldn't do anything. The king was weak. He couldn't do anything about this. Daniel could not do anything about this. He knew it was coming. But what that does is that opens the door for God to show his power, show his divine power. Daniel did not stand a chance with hungry lions without a miracle. But this is also a story of courage. You know, courage does not consist in feeling no fear, but conquering that fear. And Daniel chose to lay aside his fear and trust God. It's a story about faith. We should never be afraid to stand up for God, because when we do, God notices. Daniel was deliberate with his prayer life. He boldly declared that he loved God too much to dishonor him by turning away from his God in fear of what others might do to him. And God noticed. It's amazing. If we will stand up, have the courage to stand up for God, he can change the world. This went out to the whole known world at the time. He changed Daniel's world. The words of the decree speak about a living God, a dominion that never ends, a God of heaven and earth, a God who rescues and saves. Daniel stood up for God, and God allowed the world to be changed when we stand up for what we believe in. The king declared that people should fear and respect the God of Daniel. So the very last verse of this, it says, so Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Well, of course he did. Not only because of his character and what kind of man he was, but now the power that's behind Daniel, showing and glorifying God in this is just an amazing thing. So that is the story today. We're going to be in chapter 7 next week.